Welcome to Make and Decorate, a podcast for makers who love to sew, quilt, knit, and decorate. Hello, everyone. I hope you are having a nice holiday season. We are really in the thick of it, with only a few more days left until Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa arrives. So while you're staying up late to bake, wrap gifts, or are making last-minute gifts, you will enjoy this new episode where I chat with textile artist Deborah Fisher of Fish Museum and Circus. We recorded this episode in September, and there is a new product that Deborah talks about that had not been released yet. It is now available to order. I have the link in the show notes, and it is a landscape turtle pincushion kit. It is so adorable and comes with a ceramic turtle design and all of the fibers needed to make this artistic landscape pincushion top, right where the turtle's shell would be. It is so adorable. And she has videos that shows how to make this pincushion top. I recently ordered one of these and it arrives in just a few days. So I'm really excited about it, and I'm going to follow up when I have completed this kit project. There's no chit-chat on this episode. It will be on the December Patreon episode where I will catch you up on quilting, sewing, the new puppy update, and more. If you sign up for the free membership level on my Patreon page at patreon.com/makeanddecorate, I will post a sample of December's episode for all of you to try out. I think there are a couple of other full episodes unlocked, so you can listen to those as well over the holidays during your downtime. This will be the last episode of 2024, and I want to wish you all the happiness of the holidays with your family, friends, and your furry cats and or dogs. Can't forget them. So give them all your love. Even if the holidays are not your favorite time of the year, sharing love and kindness to everyone can warm your heart and maybe even surprise you with some joy. Speaking of joy, let's listen to my chat with Deborah Fisher from Fish Museum and Circus. I'm excited to introduce my guest for this episode. Deborah Fisher with Fish Museum and Circus is a designer and maker of handmade things and has a beautiful online shop, which Deborah says mostly you will find here things of a sewing, textile, and ceramic nature with other odd bits thrown in. Hi, Deborah. It's nice to see you and be able to chat with you today.
It's nice to see you too, Stephanie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. And I just have to mention that I met you in person at the H&H America show this past spring, and it was merely by accident. Yes. And we ended up eating lunch together, which was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And I knew your company name when you were started to talk about it. I was totally familiar with those gorgeous ceramic pincushions. So I was very excited to meet you in person. We're going to talk about all of that. And I just feel like, even just perusing through your website now, again, just preparing for this, it's just, you have such a vibrant energy with the things that you make and design. And it's just really happy. I love seeing happy things, and I'm sure it makes all of your followers and people who purchase from you happy as well. So we're going to dig into all of that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
You do a lot of different things like I do. And I'm curious to learn about the ceramics part. So we need to talk about that. But just where did all of this creativity start? Did you get formal education in design, or is this something that just, developed with the business that you started?
Well, it's been something that I have done for forever. I really have always been a mixed media maker. My focus has been on fibers, textile, sewing, that type of thing. I did get a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Fiber. I got a Master of Fine Arts in Fiber. So I've always done something. But all the other mediums have kind of come in at one time or another. I've probably done a little bit of almost everything. And so it just kind of evolves.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So you are educated in fiber, and which explains all the gorgeousness that we see with all of your designs and the things that you make. So, I mean, like when I went to college, I didn't even know that existed. I don't know what world I grew up in, but in the Midwest here. But how did you just know that you wanted to study fiber and textiles like that?
Well, I guess as with many people in this kind of industry, my mother taught me how to sew when I was younger. My grandmother taught me how to knit, and so we just did a lot of that kind of thing in our house. We had a room that I guess some people would call like a den or a family room, but it was also a room where we made a lot of things. And my mother had, a sewing machine, and she taught me how to sew. And it just was the area that I was most drawn to. Although when I started off in college, I was a sculptural studies major. And that kind of encompassed all of the, I would say, three-dimensional type of materials, the metal smithing and ceramics and sculpture and fiber. But I was really most comfortable in the fiber department. So I ended up just becoming a fiber major.
Oh, that's really interesting. And yeah, that I could see how that could form, you having that around you growing up and learning how to sew and knit too. That's fortunate that you had that in your family surrounding you and you learned it and developed the love for fibers.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm not much of a knitter. I mean, I can do the basic the stuff. And that's actually, just as an aside, where I really learned about Kay Fawcett was when, before he got into all of the fabric and the quilting, he did yarn and knitting patterns. And I remember going to the library to the large book section because his books were really big, and sitting on the floor where the large books were and looking at all of his knitting books with all these intricate patterns, which I never could make, but it was just a great inspiration. So,
yeah, it's very interesting because I learned of Kay Fawcett on the quilting side, and then learned about how he got into it through, the knitting and all that stuff. And it's fascinating. And he does have that nice, bright palette that he uses as well, which is also so very happy. And I love his fabrics too. But that aesthetic was interesting. So, so you went and you studied the fiber arts, and then when did you start your Fish Museum and Circus business?
Well, I was really a fine artist more so. There's always that kind of nebulousness in, fine art versus fine craft versus craft versus whatever. So for lack of better terms, because I think there should probably be more terms for these things, I was more of a fine artist, making more sculptural work. And then my daughter was born, and I started doing returning a little bit more, I would say, to sewing. And so I ended up kind of phasing out of my fine art work because it was difficult. I was her primary caregiver, and it was harder to have a fine art studio than it was for me to have a sewing studio. So I kind of started well, also at that time, just before she was born, I started a nonprofit quilting group with my mother. And so that was also a big influence on how I returned to sewing. I had actually never made a quilt before that, but we started this quilt group to donate quilts. And so then I had to learn how to make a quilt. So I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I better figure this out. So that was a whole kind of change really happened I would say slowly, because I do everything kind of slowly. And that's when I started kind of focusing more on that. I spent most of my time working in the not-profit group. I ran the whole thing. I designed most of the quilts for it and the programs. And then I started designing sewing patterns, and that's when I ended up publishing a few books, and things kind of evolved. And the ceramics, which was really kind of when I think of this stage of what I'm doing now, started in about 2015, and the business as it is more so now started in like 2016.
Okay.
So it's been a while already.
So, I mean, that's about the time that I think I learned about you through, I don't even know where, but it was floating around either social or through quilt groups or something like that. And and it was primarily like these gorgeous ceramic pincushions. Yeah, so that's interesting. Okay. And I find it interesting too, because you're right about that fine art and that sort of fine line and distinction and all of that. And I agree there should be more terms, because I I think that, like, and I've seen it both ways. I've seen fine artists. There's a very like fine artist popular for his quilts, and they're shown in galleries and museums, and he never wants to commit to like, this is my medium. It's like it leaves it open that he wants to change it, and he's fine. He's a fine artist. He's not
Right.
not a quilter.
Yeah.
And then there's other people that embrace it, like Heidi Parks, and you do as well, and that there can be a like market and respect for the home sewing, let's say, artist or fiber artist and stuff like that. I mean,
Yes.
I watch Quilting Arts and that TV show. I think they're still running shows now. And I mean, the fiber artists that they have on there are people who do this as a hobby. I mean, some of them do it as a living as well, but I mean, their work is just fascinating, and it's because they spend their time and their love with it, and they develop it, and they're just it's a love and passion for them. And I think that like makes a big difference to like
Yes.
bringing in a bit more terms than just
Yeah, I think the word craft really encompasses way too many things. So it's hard to I find it just kind of a hard word to say sometimes.
I do too. So. I know. And I've embraced it a bit more over the years, because I'm just like, it's not something to be like ashamed of or embarrassed to be clustered into that group, because more and more, I think in these days and with the social media and, it is kind of like developing a new genre, and I still like, I don't know, it's a respect. It is a value for it. And I know everyone values things differently. Like being in interior design, I've had customers who absolutely don't value
Yes.
the
Mm-hmm.
experience and the expertise of consultation time versus like shopping you on the internet. And it's just like, you take our knowledge and you do that. That's like zero respect right there.
Yes. Yeah. It's, when kind of the greater audience asks me, oh, what do you do? I usually just say I'm a ceramic and textile designer,
Mhm.
because saying that I make ceramic and textile pin cushions, and like it's
Mhm.
I think it's kind of a little bit simpler.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So that's interesting. I it's I'd like to get that input from people like you that are, have that fine art background, and like Heidi Parks too.
Mm-hmm.
So and just because I think it's important for everyone to just like, it's a good, uh, topic of conversation when they're together with their whatever quilt groups and guilds and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that, to just really like talk about it. And that's how I think it gets more just visibility
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. So great, that's
And
really good.
I think that's one of the wonderful things about this industry also, is that so many people came from other backgrounds that were not art backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes feel like it can be a disadvantage to have the art background, because you have all this other baggage that kind of comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And to just kind of, I would think it would be very kind of freeing to just jump into it with like none of that. And be having been something else, and I've never been
Yes.
something else. Yeah.
I totally understand that. If I'm understanding you right, I have the same thing from the interior design. I've been working in, I've been in several different levels of the interior design. Like back when I first started, um, there there was a lot more that in between the high end and the like DIY of
Mm-hmm.
interior design, and that has really shrunk over the
Mm-hmm.
last decade. And so then I moved into and freelance and have been doing this high end over the last 15 years. And there is this like, and the fine artists have that same sort of condescension of,
Mm-hmm.
it's that decorating, this is design, and all of the pretenses and stuff that you're going to do wrong, and it has to be done this way, not that
Mm-hmm.
way, and it just starts to like box you in.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
love now being in this, craft, or fine craft, or whatever we're doing, making things with our hands, um is just been a lot more freeing, because
Yes.
and
And
it
it's so much more accessible to
yes,
everybody. I
yeah,
found that, for a relatively small amount of money, somebody can buy one of my pieces and it can make them happy every time they look
right.
at it. I mean, it's really simple, but
Mhm.
that's really fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And they don't have to feel inferior of it either. I mean, it's just like, it's actually, to me, buying something that is handmade, one of a kind, from someone, to me is much more cherished, heirloom, valuable than, you know, just trying to keep up with, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the Joneses, per se, I guess,
Yes.
and acquiring things
Yes.
that really don't really mean that much, or are produced, whatever, like that. That's just my own personal
Mm-hmm.
view and opinion. And so it's great. I love seeing artists and creative designers like yourself out there. And that's why I think I follow you for so long. And I just love to see what you're doing. And that's why I was so excited when I ran into you. And here we are talking. So let's talk about these ceramic pin cushions, because they are done in a very artistic way. They're very one of a kind. You sell out right away. I haven't even gotten one yet.
I might be able to hook you up.
But they're fantastic and they're awesome. And they're, and then when I look through them all and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I almost would want to use this as a decorative item versus like a useful one. But then you have these other ones that are just like the little smaller size ones. And I'm like, that I could use every day. So then you know what I'm saying? Like you have those different types where I think they can go, any way, either way, because they're just so gorgeous and beautiful. But go ahead and talk about
Thank
those.
you. Yeah, it's when I first started, my thought was, well, how many pin cushions do people need? Well, apparently people collect pin cushions. I had I'm not really a collector of things in terms of like one category of things or anything. So I was really surprised when I found out that people have pincushion collections, and there are people now who have collections of my pincushions also. And I can't imagine that they are using all those pincushions. So I think maybe I'm very much interested in using the things. But everybody is obviously free to do what they like, and if it makes them happy, that's great.
I like to use them too. Yeah. Even like I love, like dishware and all of that stuff. And my younger sister, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast like ages ago, but she saw me like pulling out and using some nice stuff. And she's like, oh, and I said, what's the use of having it if you can't use it? It's just going to sit in a cabinet and then like we're gone. And then where does it go and who uses it next? You know what I mean? So yeah. And then since that, she has always remembered it. It makes me really proud of her. she's like scoured estate sales and gotten these gorgeous little dishes and everything that they use every day. She's got 4 little kids and it's just so adorable. I love it. I absolutely love it. So same thing like with your pin cushions too. They can certainly be used every day. You design. Okay. So do you have like a place where you go to like, make these ceramics? And when because I know it requires like kilns and all this other stuff and drying periods and everything, glazings and stuff like that.
So it's all done in my house. Yeah, it's kind of, well, if you want, I'll tell you the story of how this kind of started.
Yes, I'm so interested.
I'd done ceramics, here and there, just being in the arts, over the years. But at the time, which was 2015, as I mentioned, I wasn't doing any of that. And my father was going to take a pottery class at the Art League of Long Island, which is about half hour from where I live. And so just kind of offhand, I said, well, that sounds like fun. And he's like, well, why don't you take it with me? And I was like, well, you know what? I think I'm going to do that. So I started there and just making things for our house and, the usual kinds of stuff. But then I started thinking about how to kind of combine that with the work that I was doing in fabric and sewing. I said, well, maybe I could make some pin cushions. It was just one of those like, oh, okay, I'll make some pin cushions and I'll see if anybody's interested. And then I started kind of posting them and people were interested. And it kind of just like, it was very kind of accidental. Like it wasn't like this grand plan. It was just like, oh, let's see what happens. And they became, and then that was kind of had a soft launch in the fall of 2016. And then I went to QuiltCon in 2017. I wanted to just see, I thought, you know what? this is going to tell me one way or the other if this is a thing that
Mm-hmm.
I could really pursue. And so we were going to the art league. I was doing some things at the art league, and my father is very much like, well, if he's going to do it, he wasn't going to do it just one day a week at the art league. He was going to set up a shop.
Mm.
And so he does hand building and wheel throwing, but he wanted a wheel, so he found a used wheel, and then he decided he was going to get a kiln. And at that time, my parents were moving from a house to a condo. And so I was like, I don't know if you can have a kiln in a condo, like, because they had a basement and whatever. But I'm like, So the kiln ended up being, and we live about 15 minutes apart. So the kiln is at my house. It's really, technically it's kind of his kiln. He doesn't think of it that way. He's extremely generous and always tells me your stuff comes first, which is, so, but it's here, and I have my studio, has like, it's kind of an everything studio. I do ceramics. I have a ceramics corner where I hand built everything. Mm-hmm. And then I have my sewing machines, and I have my packing counter that I pack and ship everything. And we do in our basement have a glazing area, and that's where I will do my glaze, which is all clear glaze, almost entirely. So it's simple. And then my father will bring his stuff here, we'll bisque fire it, and then he'll do his glazing in our basement, and then I glaze fire everything. So.
Oh, that's fun. And that it's so accessible to you as well, because I think that's another thing. I've here and there have, had this like inquisitive like interest in possibly like trying out ceramics, but it's never really convenient, and just, you know what I mean? It's so.
Yes. It's kind of interesting to be in the quilting world and in the ceramics world a little bit, and just seeing how different it is, how similar it is. I think quilting is really very accessible, because you don't even need a sewing machine, really. You could, you could hand sew everything, and sewing machines you can get for like $20 at a yard sale, actually, if you just wanted some basic, something that basically sewed. So, but it's really hard. You can do a lot in ceramics without equipment, but the kiln is something that you kind of really can't do without.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that story with your dad. So it's like something you guys have together, and it's so cool. So then your ceramic pin cushions, and then getting into that nonprofit business got you more and more into quilting and designing quilt patterns.
Yes.
And you have some like quilt and craft kits on your website, and just talk about that now, because you obviously now do have a love for quilting. So how is that for you?
It has been wonderful. I don't make as many quilts as I used to. They really right now will just kind of correspond with when I have a fabric collection coming out, because I just find it. Sometimes I like to say, I'm easily bored, but I'm more. That's kind of like negative. I try to be more positive about this and just say that I'm just really curious about all the things.
Yes. Yeah, I can understand that for sure.
And I'm just very much like interested in materials. Yep. And so I just, as much as I love one thing, like I love quilting cotton, I can't just do that one thing.
Yes. Yes. Me too. And I'm getting back into clothing sewing, and the fabrics for sewing clothes is much more expansive and I think complex than, just quilting, because quilting really needs like a certain weight of fabric for it to work, because it's like layered and it can get really heavy if the fabric is
Mm-hmm.
heavy. And so there is this shop we just went to last weekend called Vogue Fabrics up in Evanston. And they're like a Mood Fabrics in New York, but
Mm-hmm.
on a much smaller scale. So there's this dress I want to make, and it's knit, and it's some of the and it's an independent. I think it's independent. It's an Australian pattern company called Style, and they recommended fabrics was like one of them was wool knit jersey, and then I was just like,
Ooh.
what? There's a jersey made with wool.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh. So I knew that
Yeah.
that place would have it. I mean, I found some online, but then I thought I've got this right here. I mean, it's like about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on traffic away, but it was worth the trip to go up there. And I did find a really pretty, purple wool jersey there for a decent price. Cause that's the other thing too, is that they sell it at it's
Yeah.
whatever, overstock, dead stock, whatever they want to call it. And so you can
Mm-hmm.
get it for a decent price. So then now I don't think that, oh my God, I'm going to ruin this gorgeous fiber.
I know.
But yeah, I see, I have the same thing with, I love textiles, and even with interior design, it's just, I'm seeing a lot of really cool textiles in the home dec market. And I also see how it pulls all of these, anything in the textile industry, period, pulls from each other. Fashion pulls from interior design and vice versa. And fashion also has pulled from quilting, I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed. So it's just kind of like this full circle of things. But I do agree, like the expansiveness of it is a lot of fun, just to
Yes.
to discover new fiber blends. And right now too, there's so many fiber blends too. It's hard for me to even keep up because,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
there's bamboo jersey, which I found that drapes better than cotton jersey. I go down this rabbit hole of research because I love to research. And so I
Mm-hmm.
had fun with that. But that's interesting. So now that we're talking about fibers and fabrics, let's talk about yours, because you are a fabric designer with Windham,
Mm-hmm.
and you have what now it's you have three
Three.
collections out
Yes.
now, and the one we're talking in September right now, and right now is a time where it's just going to start shipping out to quilt shops, right?
Yes. I hear this is the third collection, which is Night Rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I hear it got to the port. I hear it has arrived at the port. Now I don't know what that means and how long it takes to get from the port
Mm-hmm.
to the shops, but yes, it was originally, the original date was in August, but of course, as we know,
Yeah.
um, I didn't expect it in August. So hopefully very soon
Mm-hmm.
it will be arriving.
And then when this episode publishes, it will certainly be available
Mhm.
because this will go out in mid-December, and so everyone look for Night Rainbow. It's you have beautiful photographs of it on your website too. I like that nice big one that you have at the one landing page or your homepage
Mhm.
on there, and so. Another thing I've noticed, I don't know if it's this collection or previous collection, but you've designed some fabrics to um, be able to be made into binding,
Yes.
where the pattern just works gorgeous and beautifully. So talk about
Yeah.
that and designing that.
So I've always, at least for quite a while, been interested in fussy cut bindings because I just find them to be a really nice detail, just that last little bit. And at first, I first started doing that, I think when I was writing my first book, and there was a quilt that was in that book. I think so. I think that's right. Where I had found this fabric with these little flowers in like lines. It was kind of like a striped fabric, but there were little flowers. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be fun if I could get those little flowers to line up like, all the way down straight. And so I'm sure maybe there was a formula at that point. This was maybe 12 years ago, something like that. But I didn't know. So I kind of figured it out. It just, I kind of was winging the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually have on my website a tutorial on how to figure it out if you're going to make your own fussy cut binding from a fabric that is not specifically designed for that. So when I was able to start designing my own fabric, I really wanted to have something that was a way to do it where you didn't have to kind of do all that mental gymnastics and figure it out. So each of the collections has boundless binding stripes, and they are designed so there are certain lines on them that are just straight lines. And if you cut on those lines, and usually I actually do it with a scissor because it's hard. I think it's harder personally. Some people probably cut it with a rotary cutter, but to get exactly on the line. So I cut them with scissors. And when you fold it in half and then put it on your the quilt along the edge, it makes the fussy cut binding without all of that mental gymnastics. It just happens. So that's something I've really been excited about for the last 3 collections, because it's just fun. And you can use them as stripes too. They work just as regular fabric as stripes, but they're just designed in that way to have that extra fun thing you can do with it.
Yes, I love that. And they do. They are very like some of the designs, you have like a little scallop designs and a stripe and with the dots and all that stuff. So it's very exciting because I also do love decorative edges. And I'm going to tell you this quick little story. Earlier this year, I had to make these. I did commission a project for one of my clients to make her placemats. And was it the placemats or the napkins? No, it was the napkins. Okay. So of course I had to design it with the mitered trim around it. It was kind of like a nice 3/4, 1 inch around the fabric. And then the fabric I chose was a hand blocked print, which I later realized as I started cutting it out to make this, edge, which is essentially binding basically, but it's done a little differently as a flange. But anyway, so the hand block print did have like sort of this loose diagonal repeat with these beautiful little flowers. But they weren't in a straight line. And so like it was off. It was crazy. It drove me nuts. So then I had to do all like what you're talking about with the whole gymnastics and everything. And I figured out like, all right, I've got to cut with like this much
yes
extra to get them all to appear at the same part. Oh, it was crazy. So the fact that you did all that ahead of time for us, oh, I totally am just, I appreciate that.
Yeah. And each time I design a new one, I still have to kind of go back and be like, is this going to work? And I have I printed out little pieces of paper that I'm folding over and trying to figure out, will this work? I can't remember. It's
a lot of work. It really is. And I did, so I did sort of like draw the line sort of, and cut it with scissors, because when it's kind of like that, where it's really not cut and dry straight line, you do have to really kind of use your your
Mhm.
scissors.
Yes.
So that's very cool. And you so you have two other collections. So the previous one is probably still out and about, right? The in quilt shops, do you think, or are they both
um,
definitely kind of sort of like sold out and gone?
I would, I think they're probably gone. I mean, I have
Okay.
in my online shop, I still have the second collection. Some of them I still have, which was Hot House. That was that collection.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so probably when this air comes out in December, I would think it'll just probably be Night Rainbow.
Got it. Okay. Night Rainbow. And Night Rainbow um, has colors that I think are sort of like more of a dusky type of color palette. Would that be a good
Yeah,
description?
they're dark. They tend to
Yeah.
be I wouldn't say all of them are, but it's a night rainbow. It's dark.
Mm-hmm.
I have always loved dark colors, and I think they are underrated in quilting
Yes.
and in sewing
Mm-hmm.
because they don't have to be used all together. So um, what I think of, I like to think of this collection as really as like dark blenders in a way. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
you I don't think of it as, well, you use the whole collection together and that's it. Whereas some fabric collections are kind of like that because
Right.
that's how they're designed, that's how they're made.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for these fabrics, I'd love to see people bring in, really bright florals or solids. And what I like about these patterns is they are simple enough so that you can use them with other patterns,
Mm-hmm.
but there's enough of a pattern where you can use them with solids too, and then they become up the pattern next to a solid.
Right, right. Yeah, and I'm looking at your website now, and you have them all sort of like spread out through it, and a lot of these, because my favorite color is purple,
Mm-hmm.
so you have a nice variety of that mixed in, and then there's some like really deep blues and charcoals and blacks, along with some of the
Mm-hmm.
brighter colors that are deeper in their um, tone, like the yellow is a
Mm-hmm.
really nice deep yellow. But you're right, because I can see like what would be really interesting to do is take one of these fabrics, like the one that you have the little, it's sort of like a little dash pattern
Mm-hmm.
on that fabric, as a background to a quilt. And like you said, use solids for the actual more the block patterns that kind of like pop off of that dark background.
Yes.
But then the dark background has dimension because it has that little subtle tone on tone pattern to it.
Yeah, they're really just great foils to anything that's really light or anything that's
Mm-hmm.
really bright. And I think
Yeah.
that I've had lots of fun working with all the sample fabric that
Mm.
I have gotten, and I hope everybody will play around with it and really. I think there's some people are a little afraid of the dark colors, and I hope that
Mm-hmm.
this will help them kind of jump right in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because we went through this whole like phase of what do they call that? Low volume.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was like very light and soft contrasts, no strong contrast. So I think now uh we're getting back to like color and vibrancy, and I see a lot of that
Yeah.
more in some collections that I see coming out. Um and what's also kind of cool is that you have two canvas prints, so they could be made into like tote bags and
Mm-hmm.
home deck stuff.
Yeah, I was
Um,
very excited
yeah.
that Wyndham decided to do that because I love making bags, and they're just great for
Mm-hmm.
and anything that needs something a little heavier. They're not super heavy canvas, so
Mm-hmm.
they are really kind of adaptable to a lot of different things.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, even, like if someone were to just even like reupholster like a seat on a chair, like a dining chair or something like that, even that canvas weight could work for
Mm-hmm.
something that's not like heavy duty use.
Yeah.
Would be good. So yeah, night rainbow. That's so cool. So it's the rainbow. I mean, you have like the Roy G. Biv, but it's in that really nice, deeper tones.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
that'll be out when this episode comes out. So everybody go
Yes.
take a look. I'll have the link to your website. And let's see. Okay, so that's Night Rainbow. And then let's go back to what else is on your horizon, I guess, because you say you like to work in different sort of areas of textiles. Is there anything that you've been wanting to try, even just for yourself, not just even for your business, but just, for creative interest?
For myself. Well, I'm definitely trying out some new ceramic things. So that those should hopefully be coming. I'm actually designing right now, which by the time this comes out should be available. This is kind of a little bit of a long-term project. I'm making ceramic pincushion kits. So we'll see.
Oh, that is so exciting.
And I really hope that I can, when this comes out, I can look back and say, I didn't jump the gun in terms of saying anything, because the whole project could fall apart. But I'm going to be optimistic.
Sure.
I developed slip casting, I don't know, procedure or whatever that I am, that to make these kits. And so I'm working on all that. I have it all lined up. So hopefully that'll be
that's
there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Excited.
It's the ceramic part will come with it. And then the kit for making is the whole top part.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you the link to it. So assuming that this all works out, you'll be able to get them.
It's just been really great to chat with you. And I'm so glad that we ran into each other and we're able to talk about, really cool stuff at the show. And I've always been really interested in what you do from a distance. And so it's really been a great honor for me to talk with you today and to be able to share your art and your love for all of this wonderful creative stuff with textiles and ceramics.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been so great. I think that's the wonderful thing about those events, to just be able to meet people. I think I'm very much an introvert, but I kind of hype myself up for those kinds of things. And
Me too.
there we were in in whatever, the little area where we could sit. And I was like,
yeah,
okay, she looks nice. I'm going to go sit over there and see if that's okay. And so then that's what happens. And I'm like, yeah. And then we ran off to see Melissa Gilbert together.
Yes.
Too, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. That was very interesting. And I've scoped out like her site and stuff. And then speaking of, all right, tangent really quick.
Mm-hmm.
There is a UK company, because it's similar to like what she does with her Modern Prairie. And this one is called, what is it called? It's something Prairie, but in the UK. And Sarah Jessica Parker really like got it on the map because she bought one of their skirts, but it's all made out of Liberty Tanalon fabric. And it's a skirt, but at the bottom hem area, there are a row of diamonds, like quilt pieced diamonds in all different color, like patterns of Liberty. And it's a simple A-line skirt with an elastic waist, but it's just made out of this fabulous fabric and then that quilted design. And now it's just like everywhere. It's so cool. And it reminded me of the Melissa Gilbert thing. So for anybody who wants to know, because by the time this comes out, I think her line is already out, but she's like a new designer with Riley Blake Fabrics now. And Melissa Gilbert, you remember Laura Ingalls from Little House on the Prairie? It's so cool.
So it's like, it was the only thing that I needed to see, like that. That I just need to see her from a distance because so that I can just be like, oh, right. Yeah. There's my childhood.
Right. Mine too. It was crazy. And I had no idea that other actor was her brother in real life. The one who played Willie, was it? Or Albert?
Yeah.
No, Willie. I can't remember. One of those kids.
Right. Oh, yes, you're right. It was one of them. Now I can't remember, but I
can't either. I think it was Willie, the Nellie's brother, the naughty kid. Oh, that was so much fun. All right. Well, you take care, and I'm really excited for everyone to listen. And like I said, all your links will be in the show notes, and because you're on Instagram as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
At Fish Museum on Instagram.
At Fish Museum on Instagram. And your website, just in case anybody wants to go look for it right this very second, is
fishmuseumandscircus.com.
Yes. fishmuseumandscircus.com. So I'm sure you've been asked this before, but how did that name come about? I know your last name is Fisher, so does that have something to do with it?
Fisher, yes. So that's the fish part. I wanted something, because I'm so kind of, I'll say, eclectic in my materials and my things that I do. I wanted a name that wouldn't kind of stick me into a category that I couldn't get out of.
Yes.
Right? So I wanted something that was going to be a little bit broader. And so the museum really comes from my fine art background, and the circus is kind of the newer circus, like whatever I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. But it's like, see, the museum to me is kind of like that little tidy place, and the circus is kind of like that exuberant mess of everything. So so they're,
that is so cool. I love it. And I just love the way you have stuff written of like, it's charming miscellany for the sewing room, maker studio, and creative home. So it's just, it's very cool. And eclectic is the one word I think I would definitely like say that your sort of the style is for all your stuff. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's evolved, over the years. It's been quite a journey.
All right. Well, thank you again, and hopefully we'll be talking again soon.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie.
Please help support this podcast by following me on Instagram at stephanie.socha.design and my YouTube channel at Make and Decorate. Also, check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/makeanddecorate, where you can subscribe to receive an extra podcast episode every month. Until next time, keep making and decorating.